From the dawn of time I have been calling you, in the deepest part of your mind, across the silence of millennia, like a star shining flawlessly in the celestial darkness. I was here before you, and despite all your efforts to destroy me, I will outlive you. When your body and your dreams have turned to dust, I will still be here, standing like a beacon, shining an invisible light. I merely arouse your curiosity, but I am your origin, your essential substance, and your hope for eternity. I am your father and your mother, the door to your existence. In your hurried and overlit world that rushes headlong with no real purpose, I am a forgotten presence, relegated to the rank of the useless. You ignore me because I give you no pleasure, even though I am the meaning of your life. For despite my benevolence towards you, you find me annoying in your quest for possessions and wealth. You turn your back on me, convinced that I belong to the past, when I am really your only future. I am the journey back to the source. I am verticality, vital energy, profound memory. I am you.
How did we come to this? How did we go from here to here? In the blink of an eye on the cosmic scale, we human beings left Mother Nature, with whom we had lived for millions of years, to live in a world of squares. We traded the circular celestial space for the earthly right angle. Why are we surrounded by right angles? We live in square rooms, inside square buildings, in square districts or blocks. We drive on roads that intersect at right-angled junctions. Our furniture is square, our books are square, our screens are square, our windows are square, everything is square. This seems quite normal to everyone, even though squares don't exist in nature. In means of transport, angles are avoided because they prevent movement. Many of us today live our lives without ever touching the ground, in cities where nature is a distant memory. These right angles are so foreign to the living world, but what impact do they have on us? Who introduced the right angle into the human world, and why? Are we like naughty children who have been put in a corner? Apparently, right from our beginnings, millions of years ago, we were nomadic. To survive, we followed the animal and plant resources available to us. We lived subject to the whims of nature, a bit like animals, or like a child who has no say in the matter. As nomads, we moved around and changed places according to the seasons. Our reference points were in the sky, because the stars are the same wherever you go, and everything in the sky is circular, and everything rotates. People who are still nomadic in our times live in circular shelters everywhere on Earth. Mongols, Eskimos, indigenous Americans, pygmies, they all build in circles and domes. They make and break their dwellings in different places, and they let themselves be guided by the cycles of time. We could all have remained nomadic for a very long time, like certain sharks that haven't evolved for 100 million years. This is not what happened to us humans. All of a sudden, after living for several million years in the same way, in the space of 10,000 years, something happened that we call the Neolithic Revolution. It's just a blink on the evolutionary scale, in which we went from a quasi-animal life, where the struggle for survival was the main activity of our existence, to the status of a space-traveling species, perhaps over-evolved, capable of destroying our own planet. It doesn't seem to make sense, as if there was some essential piece of information which is missing in this story. Many thousands of years ago, before the Romans, before the Greeks, even before the ancient empire of Egypt, an unknown people were building megalithic monuments on planet Earth. Their works have crossed continents and millennia, which lead us to believe that there were separate populations with no link between them. But the similarities between the building techniques that we used, the architectural principles involved, and the engravings and sculptures seem to indicate a common thinking process. When we examine the astronomical alignments, the geometry and the measurements of these monuments, we can be sure they come from a same cultural basis. Our oldest history begins with the Sumerians, a mysterious people who suddenly appeared from nowhere. According to Berosus, a Chaldean priest from the 3rd century BC, they came from the sea and brought with them astounding knowledge which they taught to the local people. They introduced the 360 degrees in a circle, the 24 hours in a day and 60 minutes in each hour. They had sophisticated mathematics and complex language. We seem to have kept many things from their culture in our present-day organization. Around the year 2000, the foundations of our model of recent human evolution were shaken by a unique archaeological discovery. It was like a tsunami, as unexpected as it was shattering. On the highest peak of the Jermus Mountains, an arid and isolated region of southeastern Turkey, the remains of the world's oldest megalithic architecture have been discovered. Göbekli Tepe. A vast excavation is still underway, revealing upright stones with a T-shape reaching a height of 5.5 meters. They were hidden from view under a gigantic artificial dry stone hill, perfectly preserved. But what has shaken our ideas about the origins of civilization is the date of this monument. The carbon-14 evidence is unambiguous. They were erected 11,500 years ago. That's unique and changes everything. Everything we learnt about the origins of civilization fell apart. This discovery gave rise to many excavations in the area, and as of 2024, 13 other sites have been discovered around Göbekli Tepe. They have been called the Tas Tepe sites. Many of them contain T-shaped pillars, and some would seem to date to before Göbekli Tepe. Other and even older sites have been found much further east around the source of the river Tigris. But despite the facts, it's hard to change our ideas and opinion. A life-sized sculpture of a rather sophisticated-looking man was found nearby and dated to the same period. Some of the most astounding discoveries come from Karahan Tepe, an incredible archaeological site which is on a par with Göbekli Tepe. In 2023, an incredible sculpture of a man in a sitting position was brought to light after extensive excavations. He had a long pointed beard like the Egyptian pharaohs. Despite these discoveries, in the museum on site, people are represented with long straggly hair, and the men with rough uncut beards, which is the way we imagine these people. The megaliths of Göbekli Tepe were erected 7,000 years before the beginning of the Sumerian civilization, which is supposed to be the origin of ours. That's more time than between the ancient pyramids and us. These are therefore the oldest megaliths known, and the right angle is already present. These megaliths were separated from the bedrock and then cut, transported and erected into menhirs. One stone was found still in its quarry. It's 7 meters long and 3 meters wide. Göbekli Tepe is an archaeological UFO which changes the paradigm of the origins of our world. No one had ever imagined its existence before it was discovered. It contradicts all the old theories about the beginning of human civilization. The finesse of the animal carvings in relief shows a respect for nature and not a bloodthirsty food relationship. Engravings of snakes, one of the animals the most represented, often shown in groups, undulate in a vertical direction like falling or rising energies. The organization of the engravings on some stones is very complex and indicates an association of concepts. Rectangular shapes are already present. The central T-shaped pillars facing each other generate a geometric structure in the center of these enclosures. They create a rectangular volume. The stones are arranged in circles with larger menhirs in the center. This reminds one of Stonehenge in England, built about 7,000 years later. The round shape connects to nomadic life, where everything is circular, like the sky. These T-shaped pillars mark the junction of the vertical and the horizontal planes. They were cut into a perfect rectangle and then set in the ground in a horizontal rectangular slab with a hole in it, which acts as a base. This relationship between the circle and the right angle indicates the relationship between the heavens and earth, where humans can consider themselves to be an intermediary between two polarities. The sophisticated monuments of Göbekli Tepe seem to have erupted into a primitive world, cutting through the horizon with futuristic forms, like antennae on a hilltop. Around 8000 BC, the megalithic structures of Göbekli Tepe were hidden from view, covered by a huge cairn, a dry stone construction 300 meters in diameter and 15 meters high, a colossal undertaking requiring the transport of 350,000 cubic meters of stone, or about 25,000 tipper trucks. It would have been much easier to destroy the monument if someone had wanted to get rid of it. This task was clearly intended to preserve the monument for future generations. On the island of Menorca in the Mediterranean Sea, there are very similar structures, circular enclosures with T-shaped megaliths in the centre. They are believed to have been built 8,500 years after Göbekli Tepe by people who had no connection with its builders. Yet the architectural similarities are striking. The sources of the megalithic culture must have flowed in secrecy for a very long time. These megalithic constructions date perhaps 2,000 years before the beginning of agriculture, which started around 8000 BC, before the first stone villages. It is believed that humans were only living in primitive tribes at that time. On another continent, in Mayan iconography, the T-shape is essential. It's a representation of the tree, which is seen as a source of life, of divine breath, because it produces the oxygen we need to live. The word Maya te means tree, and it's close to the word tree in English. It is also the name given to this letter in French. And what if Göbekli Tepe were the tree of knowledge, which is mentioned in the book of Genesis in the Bible? It's true that there are a lot of snakes there. In France, in Karnak, there are thousands of megaliths. National Geographic magazine ranked Karnak as the most mysterious place on Earth. If people on this planet were travelling over long distances many millennia ago, they must have been able to get their bearings. To get your bearings, you first have to know about cardinal directions. These are another example of right angles that take part in our lives even if we're not always aware of them. The north-south and east-west axes intersect at right angles, structuring space with squares. This is the basis of geometry, the measurement of the Earth. But it's also very different from nature. Do we know the origin of cardinal directions? To get our bearings, we sometimes use a magnetic compass which points to the Earth's magnetic north. While this is a way of orienting ourselves, which can be useful for getting around, it is not a reliable orientation in the long term, for example, for orienting a monument. Magnetic north moves with the movement of the iron mass inside the Earth. This direction therefore changes over time and place. It is not at all the same as geographical north, which remains stable. The builders of the Great Pyramid oriented their structure with incredible precision on geographic north, which has not changed since. Geographic north points to the North Pole, through which the Earth's axis of rotation passes. Geographic south is in the opposite direction. Meridians are lines of longitude that connect the two poles of the Earth, thus tracing a north-south axis. This axis is the center of the nightly rotation of the stars. The equator, which is the largest circle that can be drawn on Earth, cuts the meridians at right angles. The parallels, or lines of latitude, run parallel to the equator. They are circles that become smaller the further you get from the equator, until they become a single point at the poles. The Earth's sphere becomes a square space with right angles. Can the cardinal axes be found in these megalithic constructions? Carnac in Brittany is a good place to start looking. "7,000 years ago in the south of Brittany in France, in the region around Carnac, began the construction of the largest megalithic complex in the world. In an area stretching from the eastern coast of the Gulf of Morbihan to the Quiberon Peninsula, on a territory of about 200 square kilometers, there are still 6 large stone alignments and several remains of smaller alignments. 7 massive tumuli. At least 10 cromlechs or stone circles. 2 quadrilateral enclosures. More than 200 dolmens, 5 of which contain numerous engravings, and many of which still have their dry stone cairns around them. And finally, countless solitary menhirs or standing stones. The largest is the Grand Menhir Brisé at Loch-Maria-Cair, now recumbent but once standing almost 20 meters high. Others still upright are up to 6.5 meters high, like the one at Cair-Zéro. These alignments at Cair-Zéro in Erdeven are made up of 9 lines of menhirs, which are oriented exactly on the east-west axis. And even though some of them have been destroyed because a road was built through them, their orientation remains obvious. There are so many megaliths in this region that a lot have been abandoned. It is estimated that about 90% of these monuments have disappeared. Early drawings and engravings of the sites give a very different impression to what we see now, with megaliths stretching as far as the eye can see, omnipresent in the landscape. It's easier to imagine the initial splendor of this architecture from another era. So what happened here? Why were hundreds of thousands of tons of stone quarried and transported to form lines, curves, chambers and hills? What was the point of it all? Karnak was carefully selected for the implantation of these giants. This place has very special characteristics that are linked to its latitude. They come from astrogeometry, an ancient science, now forgotten, which gives a special character to a place from the fact that the sun and or the moon trace a geometric shape on the horizon by the extreme positions of their rising and setting. On 2 days each year, the 21st of March and the 23rd of September, everywhere on Earth there are 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of night, hence the word equinox, nights equal to days. On these days the sun rises exactly in the east and sets exactly in the west all over the planet. On the days following the equinoxes, the sunrises and sunsets progressively move away from the east-west axis to extreme points where they stop for a few days. That's why the length of the day varies. In fact, the movement of the rising sun along the horizon is like the swing of a pendulum. There are pauses, accelerations, and decelerations. The longest and shortest days of the year are called solstices. In Latin, this means sun stops. June the 21st is the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, and December the 21st is the winter solstice. These days correspond to the position of sunrise and sunset on the horizon when they are at their extreme limits. The rising sun is furthest from the east-west axis. The further away you are from the equator, the greater these variations become. At the latitude of Karnak, when the monuments were built, the sun traced a very particular geometric shape. The position of its rising at the equinox on the east-west axis, and the position of its rise at the summer solstice, the extreme northern position of its annual movement, form the exact angle of a 3-4-5 triangle. Incredible as it may seem, the megalith builders must have known this, and they used this fact to determine the cardinal axes. They must have chosen the latitude of Karnak on purpose. They consciously implanted here humanity's first large-scale monumental architecture. And nobody seems to talk about it, apart from a few rare exceptions. The 3-4-5 triangle axis is very visible in the Kermario alignments at Karnak. But what's so special about a 3-4-5 triangle? They seem to have gone to great lengths to make it central to their constructions. We learned that the 3-4-5 triangle is the first triangle of Pythagoras, the Greek scientist who lived 2,500 years ago. I found out since that this triangle was already well known before that, since the Sumerians had written it on their tablets, which are 3,500 years old. The elevation of the central pyramid of the Giza Plateau is also structured according to this triangle, and this pyramid is over 4,500 years old. According to Plutarch, a Greek philosopher from the 1st century, the Egyptians hold the 3-4-5 triangle, the most beautiful of triangles, in the highest regard, inasmuch as they compare it to the very nature of the universe. The 3-4-5 triangle is the expression of the union of three fundamental forces. 3 is the heavens, verticality. 4, the earth, horizontality. And 5, the human being, with 5 fingers to act in the world. This triangle has been omnipresent in our modern life. It's the simplest way to draw an exact right angle. The sacred triangle of the Egyptians is still used on our construction sites to draw the right angle of a house. Masons use the 3-4-5 triangle, and precision is to the millimetre. 6 meters are measured on one side, then 8 meters perpendicularly. The two ends are repositioned to get exactly 10 meters, and then you're sure to obtain an exact right angle. So the special thing about the 3-4-5 triangle is that it has whole numbers on all 3 sides. On squared graph paper, if we measure 3 squares vertically and 4 squares horizontally, then the line joining the two ends will have exactly the same size as 5 squares, although it is on an angle. So the relationship between the 3 corners is very precise. In the megalithic sites in Karnak, the sides of the triangle 3 and 4 go along the cardinal directions. It is the combination of the measurements, the angles, the cardinal directions and the whole numbers that make these monuments so special. In the ancient way of thinking, every shape generates a wave that has an effect on living things. Today we can call them shape waves. On this rock face, with a carving of waves, the shape of the Ankh, a T with a round shape at the top, is placed on a fracture in the rock. It connects the sky, the round part, to the earth, the T. In ancient Egypt, crop fields were circular, which opened them up to celestial influence. Sacred spaces are built according to this principle. An experiment was conducted on the beach with 2 eminent geobiologists from France. They were able to detect waves given off by a shape which had simply been traced in the sand. It was the double square at the exact dimensions of the chamber of the Great Pyramid. Elements of the science of the ancients have come down to us under the name of quadrivium. According to the ancient view, the 4 paths of the quadrivium, numbers, geometry, music, and astronomy, are the 4 paths that allow the relationship with the spirit, a higher intelligence that goes beyond the human ego. At the heart of everything is number, the principle that precedes creation and determines it through laws. This is followed by geometry, which is the unfolding of number in space. Music, the unfolding of number in time. And finally, astronomy, the unfolding of number in space and time. The search for this relationship with the spirit should be the very meaning of earthly existence, for it is only through this junction that the human being can discover his true nature. Astrogeometry is therefore the combination of two subjects of the quadrivium, astronomy and geometry. So Karnak would seem to be the ideal place for rectangular constructions, the temple of the right angle, so to speak. By tracing the axis of the sunrise at the period of solstice, when the sunrises are stationary for several days, it becomes easy to trace the cardinal axes, east-west and north-south, using the 3-4-5 triangle. This must be what the builders did. By doing this, they introduced harmony to an entire territory. They created what could be called a gigantic sacred space, a kind of Garden of Eden. Two dolmens at Rondeau Sec in Plouarnel are aligned side by side. At the moment of winter solstice, the rays of the rising sun come in through the small low entrance and light up a stone at the back of each chamber. But more surprisingly, if the axes of these two dolmens are extended along the exact angle of a 3-4-5 triangle from west, we come to two gigantic megaliths at the head of the alignments of St. Barbe. The accuracy is precise to 1/100th of a degree over a distance of 5,000 feet. Two other dolmens will again illustrate this principle. The dolmens at Manegros and Manebraz in Erdeven near Karnak. These two dolmens are identical in structure and unique because a corridor leads to 4 rectangular chambers, 2 on either side of the axis. The corridors are both orientated towards the sunrise on the shortest day, the winter solstice on the 21st of December. If we extend the axis of the corridor of the Manegros dolmen, again along the axis of a 3-4-5 triangle, we run down the corridor of the Manebraz dolmen. These two dolmens are aligned on the slope of a 3-4-5 triangle. They are exactly 1,050 meters apart. At the right angle of this triangle, a field of alignments of menhirs, now ruined, was oriented on the east-west axis. Again, a gigantic 3-4-5 triangle alignment took place here 6,000 years ago. Two other places in particular give the keys to this right-angled geometry that seems to generate a special energy. The megalithic rectangle at Crucuno and the quadrilateral and giant of Le Manio. The famous megalithic rectangle at Crucuno looks almost too perfect to be true. A special aspect of the Crucuno quadrilateral comes firstly from its orientation. Its 4 sides are rigorously aligned with the cardinal axes. 2 lines are north-south and the other 2 are east-west. This fact is not compatible with the idea we have of the humans who lived in the region 6,000 years ago. Secondly, at the moment of the solstices, the sun rises and sets along the diagonals of the rectangle. This fact was exact at the time of construction, around 4000 BC. Today it has shifted by less than 1 degree. Thirdly, the proportions of this rectangle are 3 for its north-south side and 4 for its east-west side. Therefore, its diagonal is 5. In other words, the two sides plus the diagonal form a 3-4-5 triangle. And finally, the inner dimensions of this rectangle measure 30, 40, and 50 megalithic yards. The members of the megalithic group called Asem have produced a rope that is 120 megalithic yards long. The rope is divided into 12 parts by 13 red bands. There are 10 megalithic yards between each red marker. The megalithic yard is a measurement that was statistically determined in the 1950s by a certain Professor Tom from Oxford University, who studied more than 600 megalithic monuments in the British Isles. The methods used to obtain his measurement of 82.9 centimetres were approved by the Royal Society of British Statisticians in 1955. The rope fits perfectly inside the Krukuno rectangle. We are checking if its dimensions measure 30 megalithic yards on the north-south side, 40 on the east-west side, and 50 on the diagonal. And that's exactly what we obtained. Incredible. The accuracy of this geometry is confirmed by distant megaliths, which mark the extension of the solstice lines or diagonals. They are placed on high points, on all sides of the rectangle. Firstly, exactly on the extension of one of the diagonals, the sunrise line at the summer solstice, a 3-meter-high menhir is still standing in a private garden. Then, 350 meters away in the other direction along this diagonal, towards sunset at winter solstice, there are several large fallen menhirs now lying hidden in prickly bushes. These menhirs were aligned perpendicularly to the axis of the diagonal of the rectangle and must have served as farsights to progressively mark the arrival of the sun towards its extreme position. Next, on the other diagonal, towards the sunset at the summer solstice, a group of ruined megaliths mark the location on the high point in the landscape. The most spectacular of all is located along the axis of the sunrise at winter solstice. In this direction, the land is completely flat for over 5 kilometers. Then we come to a hill, and at the top, the massive menhirs at the head of the Kermario alignments in Karnak. From the Krukuno rectangle, at a time when the vegetation was low, one could watch the sunrise on the shortest day of the year, with the giants of Kermario silhouetted in black on its surface. The Krukuno rectangle was therefore plotted using distant aiming points in order to achieve a very high level of accuracy. This clearly shows the use of scientific method. The Krukuno dolmen contains the largest coverstone in the entire region. It weighs around 40 tons. In the past, the dolmen had a very long corridor which has now completely disappeared, but traces of it can be seen in an old engraving by Blair and Reynolds, made in 1833. The remains of this corridor's carved stones can still be found, reused in stone buildings built nearby. The dolmen's chamber is located on the extension of the stones that make up the northern side of the Crucuno rectangle. This line heads due west. At sunset on equinox, seen along this line of menhirs in the rectangle, the sun sets in the dolmen's chamber. It's not only at Crucuno that the measured rope corresponds exactly to the position of the megaliths. With the same rope and the same measurements, we find exactly the same 3-4-5 triangle at the Manio site, where there is the largest menhir of all those at Karnak. On an east-west axis are two stones of the same width, the giant of Lemanio and a rounded recumbent stone called the Lady of Lemanio. To the south of this line, I discovered a square stone under the vegetation in the exact spot where I hoped it would be. This was quite an experience. This square stone is located exactly in the right angle of a 3-4-5 triangle, the same size as at Crucuno. It is 30 by 40 by 50 megalithic yards. From the giant to the square stone, there are four spaces of 10 megalithic yards. 30 megalithic yards link the square stone to the Lady. And finally, between the Lady and the Giant, there are 50 megalithic yards along the east-west line. I decided to name this form the fertility triangle. If we go north from the Lady, we come to a quadrangle of small stones, and in fact, precisely to two stones that are much larger than the others. They form a kind of door. This door marks the corner of a second 3-4-5 triangle, which is this time aligned on the cardinal axes. Here the Lady positions the right angle of the triangle, while the Giant marks the other corner. The 5 side of the fertility triangle becomes the 4 side of this one. The door seems to be the negative form of the Giant, and more precisely, the shape of a vulva. It thus contrasts with the obvious phallic nature of the Giant. At sunrise on winter solstice, on December the 21st, the shadow of the Giant enters through this doorway and seems to fertilize the quadrangular enclosure. 9 months later, at the autumnal equinox sunrise, the Giant shadow, heading west, brushes against the rounded Lady, like a stone womb ready to give birth. This would seem to be the staging of human gestation, linked to cosmic cycles. I've called this second triangle the conception triangle. So things are becoming very clear. The 3-4-5 triangle was the emblem of the right angle. Not just an intellectual theorem, but also a real sacred space, an ode to life containing celestial movement. And it was the fundamental shape used by the megalith builders of Karnak. The same principles expressed in geometry can be found in musical harmony, another of the 4 subjects of the quadrivium. It is said that in ancient Greece, if you mistuned your lyre and played in a public space, it could be punished by the death sentence because it shattered the harmony of the world. Although the Greek scholar Pythagoras is known to all school children as the patriarch of geometry, on the front of Chartres Cathedral, the school where the ancient science was taught, his muse above his head represents music. So we can understand that there is a close relationship between harmony and geometry. It was Pythagoras who revealed the principle of the musical octave. By doubling the vibratory level of a given note, we obtain the same note at a higher pitch. The octave note appears by natural resonance. A guitar string is vibrated, and the string above it vibrates by sympathetic resonance without being touched. Pythagoras understood that the sound produced by a tube is proportional to its length. If a tube is cut in half, the sound produced will be twice as high. This is the octave. Cut into 3 parts, it is 3 times higher. Cut into 4, the note is 4 times higher, which is the next octave, and so on. The 3-4-5 ratio can therefore also be expressed in vibratory form.
1/3,
1/4, 1/5.
This is called a perfect chord. A note's frequency can be expressed by the number of vibrations per second, also called the hertz, after the German physicist. Frequency can be measured with a frequency meter. We can see that the frequency of a sung note oscillates around a central frequency. Let's take a fundamental note given the value 1 or C. If we multiply its frequency by 2, we get the octave, the higher C. If we multiply it by 3, we get the 5th, or G. If we multiply it by 4, we get the next octave. And if we multiply it by 5, we get the note E. 3, 4, 5, G, C, E. It is the perfect chord, a harmony that inspires joy, optimism, and strength. The shape of the 3-4-5 triangle can do the same, generating harmony in physical space. These notes, which follow a progression of vibrations per second related to whole numbers, appear suddenly and naturally by resonance. There are no intermediate notes, no sliding to the higher notes as the tube turns faster. The sound jumps directly from one note to the next. This is why the musical scale, called the natural scale, can be called the unfolding of numbers in time. So what is a false note? It is a sound that does not have a simple numerical relationship to other notes. For example, if we add to our fundamental note of 200 Hz a note that vibrates at, say, 387 Hz, slightly less than double, it will create an unpleasant sound. 387 is not a harmonious ratio to 200, and we feel this friction through muscle tension, which we perceive as uncomfortable. Professor Tom also demonstrated how the 3-4-5 triangle was used to draw curves, especially those that compose the cromlech at the head of the Carnac alignments. By putting two 3-4-5 triangles back to back, it becomes possible to draw the shape of an egg using a rope centered on each of the corners. The word cromlech comes from the Breton words crom, meaning curve, and lech, meaning standing stone. Cromlech therefore indicates a curve of standing stones. The cromlech at Le Mennec in Carnac is difficult to see as a whole because a village is built inside it and around it. Here is how the 3-4-5 triangle was used to draw this egg-shaped cromlech. A first 3-4-5 triangle of dimensions 37.5 megalithic yards on side 3, 50 megalithic yards on side 4, and 62.5 megalithic yards on side 5, was placed with its 5-side aligned north-south. This triangle was then mirrored around the 4-side. From the corners of this double 3-4-5 triangle, the egg was drawn as seen on the beach. The upper side of this double triangle coincides with the sunrise at the summer solstice, marked in the alignments by a large recumbent stone, and further on by a squat circular stone located between the lines. However, this fact is only true at the latitude of Carnac on Earth. If we go further north, the shape of the solstice rectangle approaches the square. Further south, and the shape flattens out. The 3-4-5 triangle is really the astrogeometric marker of the latitude of Carnac. A geometrical design identical to that used for the Le Mennec cromlech at Carnac exists on a Sumerian tablet found in the city of Ur and dated 2100 BC. The sides of the triangle are well marked in Sumerian notation 30, 40, and 50. Whether being clearly visible or subtly inscribed, the 3-4-5 triangle is omnipresent in Carnac. Do the alignments at Le Mennec in Carnac also follow the direction of a 3-4-5 triangle? In fact, it's different, but it's connected, and it gives another indication which is very interesting. What is the angle of these parallel rows of menhirs in relation to the cardinal axes? A quick look will show us that the 11 alignments at Le Mennec West point exactly to the beginning of the 10 rows of alignments at Kermario, 1,466 meters away. The line furthest south in Lamennec aims at the dolmen of Kermario. The next line aims at the most southern line, and so on. The angle of these lines from north is 71.56 degrees. If we measure from the east-west axis, we get 18.44 degrees, which is precisely the angle of the diagonal of a triple square. We can measure exactly the same angle for the second and third lines. The menhirs in the alignments of Lamennec are aligned in this direction, as are the first stones at Kermario. If we look at the Old Testament texts of the Bible, God Himself is said to have introduced the right angle on earth in the instructions He gave verbally to Moses for the construction of his earthly dwelling. This building was open on the east side. It was 10 cubits wide, 10 cubits high, and 30 cubits long. Its ground plan was thus 1/3, a triple square. The tabernacle was divided into 2 parts. On the west side was the Holy of Holies, which was a cube with sides of 10 cubits. And on the east side was the Holy Place, which had the ground plan of the double square, 10 by 20 cubits. Later, perhaps around 1000 BC, Solomon used the same proportions and orientations for the construction of his famous temple. The ground plan had the same division into 2 parts, but was twice as large. Its height was multiplied by 3. The 40-cubit long double square on the ground generates a 3-4-5 triangle in the elevation of the walls, with a height of 30 cubits. The triple square and the 3-4-5 triangle were thus combined in Solomon's temple. In the Muslim religions, the great sacred place is the Kaaba in Mecca, a name which means cube in Arabic. These construction principles, squares and rectangles with proportions in whole numbers, oriented onto the cardinal directions, reserved for temples, for sacred and fixed places, positioned once and for all in a chosen location. They were different from the dwellings of the natural and living world, which is always in movement. So, who built the triple square of the Lamennec alignments in Karnak, which conforms to the same principles as Solomon's temple, 4,000 years before the Bible was written? But there is another secret hidden here, for the angle of the triple square is exactly half the angle of the 3-4-5 triangle. When the first line of the Lamennec megalithic alignments in Karnak arrives at the dolmen of Kermario, it doubles its inclination and runs along the first line of menhirs south of Kermario. This is extremely precise geometry in relation to the cardinal directions and on a gigantic scale. The distance of 1,466 meters between the first stones of the Lamennec lines and the first stones of the lines at Kermario is exactly 10 times the height of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. So it is a distance of 2,800 Royal Egyptian cubits. But the link between Karnak in France and Karnak in Egypt is another story. Following this discovery in the Karnak alignments, it is now interesting to see whether at Göbekli Tepe, which was the world's first temple, there was any geometry underlying the layout. In 2019, two researchers from Tel Aviv University developed a method for determining the exact centers of the three enclosures currently uncovered at Göbekli Tepe. They discovered that these 3 points form an almost perfect equilateral triangle. Its base aligns with the 4 central pillars of the 2 lower enclosures. This is already a remarkable fact. But how is this triangle oriented? The existence of geographical north marked on the plan allows us to see that the base of this triangle is inclined along the diagonal of a triple square placed on the cardinal axes, exactly like the Lemenek alignments in Karnak. This is an indisputable fact that pushes back the origins of the geometry of sacred spaces to nearly 10,000 BC. But the modular layout doesn't stop there. The left side of the triangle is marked by the diagonal of a quintuple square, oriented north-south. The angle thus formed is 60.255 degrees and corresponds better to the layout of the centers than the perfect equilateral triangle. The builder's subtlety is immense, and their use of modular geometry shows the very high level of refinement in their science. The third side of the triangle is traced by the diagonal of an 8 by 9 rectangle. The angle on the lower right of this triangle is 60.068 degrees, and the sum of the 3 angles is exactly 180 degrees. Obviously, since these stones have been covered by a cairn for 10,000 years, they are all exactly in their original places. On an island called Gavrinis in the Morbihan Gulf, just near Karnak, is a unique megalithic monument, one of the best preserved in the world. Its position between 2 rivers and surrounded by hills corresponds to a perfect feng shui site, according to ancient Chinese science. It is a dry stone cairn with a 50-meter diameter covering a dolmen. In 2012, at winter solstice, the ASEM megalithic group organized a certain number of experiments in this monument. The aim was to film the sunbeam entering the dolmen chamber at that period, to measure the exact angle of the sunbeam in relation to the cardinal axes, to take readings of radioactivity and negative ions, and finally to test the effect of a stay in the chamber on human vitality. The corridor is more than 13 meters long and is very narrow. The stones in the corridor are all in their original places. Out of 29 stones, 23 are engraved with mysterious and abstract forms. Like waves that unfold. Or energy that rises and falls. At the entrance to the corridor, between 2 cover stones, a very hard-to-see engraving seems to be a signature of the monument. 2 U-shaped forms like waves or snakes are positioned side by side. Between the two we can make out concentric semicircles, like waves spreading out from a central point. We can also discern the heads and tongues of the two snakes. Could this mean that two equal forces are opposed here? Like the two mammoths face to face in the Rouffignac cave in Dordogne? Could this opposition give rise to a new force? Despite adverse weather conditions, it was possible to measure the exact angles in the corridor. The sun's first rays run down the diagonal of the corridor, and it was possible to take the measurement in the gap behind the door. The last stone on the left of the corridor juts out slightly, and this is where the sun's first rays hit. There is a horizontal line engraved on this stone, and underneath it, one seems to see the sun before it rises. By capturing the sun's position, exact north can be calculated, which allows one to measure perfect angles. This last stone on the left plays a very important role in adjusting the exact angle. It catches the first deep red rays, refracted by the atmosphere before the sun is even visible on the horizon. As the sun rises, the beam moves slowly to the right over the stone towards the chamber. Suddenly, the beam leaves the stone and projects like a laser towards the back of the chamber. Then it widens and turns yellow. This is the exact mark of the 3-4-5 triangle. On winter solstice in 2019, we returned to Gavrenis to try to capture images of the magical moment I had witnessed in the past. A bank of clouds on the horizon prevented the first rays of sunlight from penetrating to the end of the corridor, and gradually the brightness increased. I was coming to the conclusion that it might not be a success again this year, when suddenly the sun broke free of the clouds and illuminated the silent engravings at the back of this man-made cavern. With its low-angled light, it revealed their structure, marked in the granite, each stone telling its story without words, a part of the whole. Once again, it's magical, as if this ray penetrates inside me to illuminate a deep and silent memory. Raindrops fall from the ceiling, reinforcing the sensation of an eternal moment. am at peace. It is unthinkable that all these astrogeometrical similitudes are the result of chance, of coincidence. In the Carnac region of Brittany, two of the most important megalithic monuments reveal an even more breathtaking secret. The first is the Tumulus Saint-Michel in Carnac, an artificial hill made of 65,000 tons of stone. The white chapel sitting on top of it and the steps leading up are, of course, recent additions. It is one of the earliest constructions, nearly 7,000 years old. Excavations carried out in the 19th century revealed a chamber hidden in the heart of the mountain. Obviously, this chamber has not moved an inch since its construction. Around the base of the tumulus, many stones were placed, 6 of which are still very visible. The tumulus has been measured to be 125 meters long by 62.5 meters wide. This is the ratio of 1 to 2 and indicates the presence of a double square. It can be seen that the central line of this double square is marked by 2 stones. A third stone marks the solstice angle from one corner of the double square. But it is the base of this double square which is extremely surprising, because it is inclined in the same way as the monuments at Göbekli Tepe, along the diagonal of a triple square placed on the cardinal directions. This means that its orientation is exactly parallel to the megalithic alignments that go between Le Mennec and Kermario to the north. The position of the tumulus can be seen to have been determined using an identical triple square. The second monument is the Great Broken Menhir of Lochmariacair, a colossal stone weighing 350 metric tons, carved from rock which comes from at least 12 kilometers away. Now broken into 4 pieces, this monolith is contemporary with the Tumulus Saint-Michel. Its base is precisely located. The location is now marked on the ground by small stones placed on the surface. However, the relationship between these 2 major monuments will reveal unsuspected facts. If we draw a line between the chamber of the tumulus and the base of the Great Menhir, we obtain an angle of 101.31 degrees from geographical north, or 11.31 degrees from the east-west axis. This is the exact angle of a rectangle of proportions 1/5, also called a quintuple square. In other words, the distance between these 2 monuments on the east-west axis is precisely 5 times greater than the distance between them on the north-south axis. But what is this distance? To find out, we can measure between the 2 monuments, and then a simple calculation will give us the size of each square. Between the 2 points, we measure 9,444.44 meters. So the calculation tells us that each square is 1,852.2 meters. And this is where our minds stagger, because 1,852.2 meters is the exact measurement of the nautical mile. The nautical mile is the average length of 1 minute of the Earth's meridian. To know the nautical mile, you need to know the size of the Earth. It is the division of the meridian by 360 degrees and then by 60 minutes. The Earth's circumference passing through the two poles measures 40,007.864 kilometers. Divided by 360, we get the length of an average degree of 111.133 kilometers. Divided by 60, the result is 1,852.216 meters, the exact size of the 5 squares placed along the cardinal axes that separate the center of the tumulus Saint Michel from the base of the great menhir. So now it's clear. These facts completely change our vision of this distant past. The combination of precise geometry with precise measurements totally removes any idea of coincidence. These immutable and gigantic monuments were positioned to last over millennia, a feat that has been achieved despite the unconscious actions of humans over the centuries. But what it reveals to us does not stop here. Why were these monuments placed on a quintuple square? Why not put them on the corners of a square, for example? Now consider the east-west side of this geometrical shape. It measures 5 nautical miles, or 1,852.2 times 5, which gives a whole number of meters, 9,261. This number is not insignificant. It is the result of multiplying 3 cubed by 7 cubed. So by these two numbers, 3 and 7, and a quintuple square, we can know the size of the Earth in meters. The same thinking process underlies all these constructions, across millennia and continents, but we no longer have any connection with that era. "7,000 years ago, in Carnac in Brittany, a profound knowledge of the measure of the meter length was inscribed. It has never been the 10 millionth part of 1/4 of the Earth's meridian, a vulgar approximation which held only for a few decades. The meter is in fact a universal measurement, because it links numbers and laws to physical reality. This is why the meter length was also inscribed in the upper chamber of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. In an incredibly intelligent way, the heart of the biggest building on planet Earth, one of the safest strongholds ever made, contains this incredible secret. It has been built in such a way that it has not moved a millimeter over the millennia. The geometrical shape of the floor, a double square, delivers a number. 3 lengths are present on this floor: the side, the length, and the diagonal. These give the numbers 1, 2, and 2.236, which is the square root of 5. If these numbers are added together, we obtain 5.236. This is the width of the chamber in meters. If we measure the perimeter of the chamber, we obtain 31.416 meters, which is exactly 10 times pi, a universal constant. On the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, at Tiwanaku in Bolivia, we will discover the same geometry with the same measurements. They have been preserved over the centuries in the monolithic structure known today as the Gate of the Moon. Although the door is slightly tapered, its average width is 1 meter and its height 2 meters. Once again we have a double square using the meter measurement, as in the Great Pyramid. By tracing the diagonal line of the Moon Gate's doorway, which is a double square of 1 by 2 meters, we obtain the measurement of 2.23 meters, which corresponds exactly to the height of the monolith. These dimensions were taken by Alfons Stubel in 1877. This geometry leaves nothing to chance, but what is really astonishing again is the use of the meter measurement. The meter length was considered to be knowledge of profound value. It had been held secret for millennia and was not openly revealed until Napoleon decided to do so after the French Revolution and his campaign in Egypt. The astrogeometrical thinking process and the same measurement system underlie all ancient constructions across millennia and continents, as we will see in the film to come. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. One language to speak of the same science. Of the same harmony. Of the same knowledge. Different places on earth were chosen to transmit this understanding in a timeless manner, beyond culture and writing. Although scattered through space and eras, they have a common source. The origin of their science was before the flood, going far back to the Megaliths. But we no longer have any connection with that era. Only Plato in antiquity spoke about the splendors of Atlantis. Diodorus of Sicily mentioned the Hyperborean people, great scientists and astronomers who lived in the north and who brought their knowledge to the Greeks through the sage Abaris. We have no other written records of these lost civilizations, but remnants of these people exist, and traces of their way of thinking also. Modern technology is beginning to allow us to appreciate the existence of a very advanced civilization in a remote past. This is an enormous challenge to the history of humans on Earth. Can we continue to close our eyes to the facts presented in this film, which are only a few examples among dozens? Only time will tell.